this beat. It lives in our chemistry. Forsaken in fraction, blood through my veins, runs deep in reaction. Inside this fire blazes through the pouring rain. Ignite this time, burning skies won't be in vain. From the ash my heart will rise, heart will rise. From the truth my soul can hide, soul can hide. It lives in my chemistry. You ain't got a hold on me. It lives in my chemistry.
Check, 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 check. Yeah, hi everyone, how's it going? It is Claire. We are back here for another Tips and Tricks Monday on the 343 Labs YouTube channel. I'm just gonna pop over into the chat for a second and say hi to a couple of folks. Hey, great to see everyone. Hi to Andrew and Thomas behind the 343 Labs channel name, as always. Todd, Scott, Jonathan, Mick, Nefertiti. Great to see all of you again. Thanks so much for coming back, and great to see all of you. Super happy to be sharing today about live effects processing. But before I even dive in, we're having a giveaway as usual every week, as we do on 343 Labs. And again, I'm getting ahead of myself, so I'll take that one step back. 343 Labs, if you are just tuning in for the first time, we are a school that's based in Manhattan in New York, but we also have a Berlin location. So we teach music production and electronic music and lots of other really great things. We also host a lot of events online, as well as 343 TV, which is what you're seeing over here. So every day at 1 p.m. Eastern Time in the United States, we do daily streams about things related to music. I host the Monday show. My name is Claire, and I'm an instructor at 343 Labs, as well as an Ableton Certified Trainer, and a couple of other hats that I wear as well when I'm not wearing headphones. I was joking about these things literally with a couple of my students, but great. So what we're gonna do today, and oh my goodness, I totally forgot. The giveaway. Yes, the giveaway. So the giveaway for this week is very exciting. As you know, we love Arturia stuff here at 343 Labs. We have given away a copy of Arturia Pigments before. Today, the giveaway is for the DX7V, or I think it's 5, plugin. So if you would like to be entered for the giveaway, please enter. Thomas from 343 Labs will probably put the link in the chat on YouTube later. So if you want to tune in for that and you want to submit your name, we want you to win. So please make sure that you submit and make sure that you qualify yourself for this giveaway. We would love for you to win something. I know like a couple of people in the chat who have regularly been coming to a lot of our streams have won things. Other things we've given away have been Ableton vouchers, for example, for the web shop. We've also given away 343 Labs vouchers too, as well as the Arturia stuff. And the Stencil Morph was a really big one that we gave away that I was so happy for. I think it was Dave who won that, Dave Freeman, who's one of our community members as well. So now on to today's topic. We're going to speak a lot about live effects processing, or hopefully we will. So live effects processing in live. And if you have been tuning into my previous streams as well, you might guess that the next couple of ones are going to be related to some aspect of live performance. So let's get started. And I'm over here, you might see that I have Push in front of me, which is the controller also made by Ableton, the company that integrates really well with live. And I'm going to just play through a couple of these things first, and then I'll talk a little bit about the live effects processing stuff. And if you've been to my other workshops before, like the ones that I host on my own YouTube channel, I've hosted recently some workshops about music making and performance using live as like a 101 sort of thing, then this set might sound a little familiar to you. But let's go ahead and take a listen to all of these things. The reason why I don't have a camera on Push is because we're actually not going to focus on Push. I'm just going to use it to demonstrate a little bit of what I have, and then we may switch over to the MPK Mini depending on how things go with today's stream. So let's get started. Let's listen to what we have. Cool. So starting off some kind of intro. This is kind of like a live performance set, right? Up next, we got the verse. And then let's skip forward, some kind of build-up or pre-chorus section. And then maybe some kind of like filler thing with the kick and hi-hat before we reach the drop chorus. And then maybe alternate version of the chorus. It's like big chorus. Cool. And then maybe like a half-timey switch. For like a bridge or a second verse or some kind of contrasting section. And I think I had another alternate beat as well for the drums. I think it's like a two-steppy thing. Yeah, like a breakbeat style thing. Cool. And then we'll take a pause right after this. Here we go. Great. So that's all of the content that we have. And that's actually one really important aspect of doing live performance stuff also, I find personally. Everyone will give you, again, varying views on this, but I think a really great part about performing live with live, especially in session view, is the ability to have more control over a linear arrangement, or a non-linear arrangement actually, because you're kind of going back and forth. You may have seen me jump between different scenes that I was launching. Anytime you see a row in Ableton Live in session view, that's called a scene. So a scene contains multiple clips across different tracks, and if you launch a scene, you can play all of these at the same time. So that's one thing that I think is really cool. You're able to have formal control over something that you might not have in a different DAW, or you might not have if you are used to working with maybe a different performance strategy, like if you perform your songs in a very linear sort of fashion. But that's actually why I love live, and I think it's one of the main things that liberated me a lot as a performer, being able to say, okay, I want to repeat the chorus twice. I can totally do that. I just let it loop again when I'm playing all of these clips in session view. So that's one thing, being able to launch clips, stop clips, copy clips if you need to, duplicate things across, delete clips if you don't need them. That's also a really great feature that you can do with live. And then I think of a couple of other things associated with that too. So for example, the idea of live looping, that's one thing that we touched on last week. So if you are, and we had a lot of great responses to that even after the stream. So thank you so much to everyone who's been supporting us, especially for that particular stream. I love talking about live looping, so hopefully it was a good intro to everyone who tuned in. If you missed it, you can still watch the replay on our YouTube channel, so feel free to look out for that. I think the title of the video is just like Live Looping 101, and I talk a little bit about the fundamentals of that. So we got live looping, we've got being able to control form. The next thing that I often think about is live FX processing, and usually that, we call it FX as like a short form for effects, really. But when I think of live effects or doing any kind of implementation with live's native devices, I think about two uses primarily. The create, and this is again super generic, it is like the more creative side of things. So for example, purposefully altering the sound of something to be more creative or to have some kind of effect. So for example, maybe like putting a reverb on something. And then I think about the more technical things. For example, if you're controlling maybe some kind of vocal and the way that it's being recorded into live, how are you implementing that technically so that, for example, you're getting a clean signal and you're not getting something that's distorted, or you're getting something that's properly controlled with its levels. So more of like a technical side of things. So EQ kind of falls under there. Compression also kind of falls under there. So I'm hoping to talk about both of these things. Maybe we'll deal with each of these at a time. And I might start off with some of the creative stuff. So in the YouTube chat, if you are with us, please offer up suggestions of any kinds of audio effects in live. I love getting suggestions from the YouTube chat always, as you know. So feel free to let me know in the YouTube chat about any kinds of effects that you think you might want to see implemented as far as live effects processing goes. So let us know in the chat. I'm going to maybe wait a couple of moments and spend some time. Actually, I'll spend some time while I'm waiting for the suggestions to come in, talk about a couple of the exciting things that we have coming up. So as you know, we also offer a lot of free online events too, like user group stuff, but we also do online classes that are like full courses too. And I only remember this now because I just talked about it yesterday, but we have a couple of upcoming courses for Ableton Live beginner and intermediate levels. So if you want to check out more info on that, you can head over to 343labs.com. We've also got lots of really great in-person programming in Berlin, where it is possible to have in-person programming, like not so possible in New York, but in Berlin it is okay. So if anyone out there is in Berlin and you want to go to an in-person event, you can head over to 343labs.de, DE for Deutschland, which is Germany, so you can head over there. Cool, we got one suggestion coming in. Thank you, Todd, for delay. Any more suggestions? Please just keep throwing them in. I'll try to pick up as many as I can to put into this. So we got delay off the bat. Anyone else have suggestions? Cool. Feel free to just type them into the chat, but maybe let's just start with delay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to head over into the browser in Live, which is all the way on the left-hand side, and I'm going to scroll through the collection of native live devices, and we're going to just implement a delay, and maybe we'll put it on the master track. So here we go. So now I've got delay. Cool. I'm going to temporarily turn all these off because I had a couple of other effects there before too when I initially did this workshop that I used the live set for. But I'm going to turn on delay. Before I do that, I'm also going to move the dry wet knob all the way down to 0%. So great, we've got some delay. Cool, Jonathan, we've got a compressor. We're going to save that for the second part when we talk a little bit more about technical uses of this. Ooh, animated onion. I love your name. Onions are awesome. I love onions too. Yeah, that's a great question actually, or not a great thought. Sorry, it is more of a thought, I guess. So, enigmatic onion said, "I don't know where to start with effects." So this is a really good video for me today. I find myself being overwhelmed and not knowing where to start. Great. That's actually it's a huge thing. I find that a lot of people also get overwhelmed with too. I find that a really great place to start is, and maybe this. I'm not sure if it's necessarily the answer that you're looking for, but a really great place to start I've found is just through experimentation and being able to dedicate some time to play around with different devices. I think that a lot of the best discoveries that anyone can make, really, whether they are a novice at using Live or someone who's been using it for years or who even happens to be an Ableton Certified Trainer, I think one of the best ways that we can improve and discover new things about Live is really just to experiment. And that's so difficult, right? Because I feel like we're all so busy nowadays. Even with COVID, everyone's busy in their own way now. We have a lot of other different activities going on. But if you can dedicate maybe 30 minutes to 60 minutes just working with whatever kinds of effects and playing around in Live, this is really more of like a philosophical thing as opposed to what I wanted to address in the stream. But I think we so often forget that when we describe music, often we say like we're playing music, right? And that's such a beautiful way to describe it, because it's like we're playing and we're having fun and we're enjoying ourselves. So it's not just like, sitting down and producing, like you're playing music, you're having fun of it. So that was my spiel. But cool, we got some delay. And, I'm going to maybe, since we're not super sure about where to start off with, thank you, Todd, for that first suggestion with delay. I'm going to maybe suggest a couple of these. So I'll go ahead and delete these other ones too so that we can start from scratch. But a really great effect that I like to put on, especially if I'm doing some more global sorts of effects processing, is some kind of reverb. So let's go ahead and pull a reverb on too. These are kind of like my dolltr go-tos in a way when I'm doing my dolltr artist project. And here's a really neat tip as well. You might have noticed that anytime I implemented both of these devices, and I will do this for a couple of the other ones too, there's this dry wet knob at the bottom of the device, and I dropped that all the way down to 0%. That's because this knob that you see over here on any device, anytime you see dry wet, it's usually some kind of mix that goes between dry signal, so the original unaffected signal, and wet, which is the processed signal. So that's why you also see a percentage thing over here. The higher the percentage, the more of the affected sound you're hearing. The lower the percentage, the less of the affected sound you're hearing. So for example, let's do the reverb here because I think it's a pretty good example. Let's go ahead and raise this up. So now I'm more reverberant. And if I bring this back down, I'm less reverberant. So that's a really great rule of thumb in general. Great, so we've got delay, we've got reverb. Something else that I find is very effective in a performance setting, or maybe as a general note, is anything that is particularly audible. So this is a consideration that I have as a live performer. When I'm, say, moving a knob or when I'm pressing a button, I really want my audience or whoever is watching me or listening to me be able to make that connection between action and audio or what they're hearing. I think that's always something that a lot of performers struggle with, and I do as well whenever I'm designing live shows, not just for myself, but also for my clients. It's like, how do we make the performance engaging so that folks aren't just thinking that you're, staring down at your laptop or staring down at your controller and messing around with it. Like, there's more than that, right? And I think one of the easiest ways to do that is really through live effects processing, because you'll turn a knob or you'll move a button and people will be able to say, oh, okay, she is turning this And the sound is changing in this way. So there must be some kind of correlation there. So great, we have delay, we have the dry wet stuff, we have reverb, also dry wet things. Something else that I found that's really cool to play around with is filters. So if I head over here, I'm gonna click and drag this maybe after the reverb and the delay, and you'll notice that on the filter itself there isn't a dry wet knob, but instead a really great knob to go for on the auto filter device is the frequency knob. So filter frequency is a term that we usually use to describe the value at which a certain sound kind of gets cut off or gets a little muted. So that's why sometimes filter frequency is also called cutoff. But if I move this knob down, you'll start to hear that I'm getting filtered out. And you can only start hearing the lower things, but you can't hear any of the higher frequencies. And that's why this is called a low pass filter. It lets low things pass through. So this is something that's really cool. You have like maybe a different kind of underwatery kind of sound. So let's keep this filter here. And I'm also gonna put one more filter behind it. And that's because I would like this other filter to, instead of being a low pass filter, maybe be a high pass filter. So let's see what happens if I change this shape of the filter to this opposite looking one. So now, instead of letting the lows pass through, I'm letting the highs pass through. So you can kind of hear me filtered out. The great part about this though is that if I use the two filters in tandem in a certain way, I can almost get like a telephony sort of effect. So let's play around with this a little. I'm going to maybe launch one of the scenes and let's see if we can find a sweet spot for the two filters. So maybe around there, right? I'm going to temporarily turn these off by clicking on their device activator buttons. That's going to temporarily deactivate them. So great. If I turn both of these two on, we have some kind of like telephony sort of effect. Maybe that might be kind of cool to take a listen to as well. Great. So one more thing that I think is pretty neat, which maybe a lot of people get a little scared of sometimes just because they're not super sure of how it works, is beat repeat. I think it's really cool to add in a couple of beat repeats. Now, I think I might like to close all of these up for now so that we keep them nice and organized. I'm just double clicking on each of the device names to collapse them temporarily. Let's put the beat repeat before the delay and the reverb. Okay, cool. So this is, I think that maybe that's why a lot of people get a little scared of beat repeat. It's just because the moment you turn it on, it's on. So you want to kind of be careful of that. But it's really great to be able to work with it. And I think that because of the way that beat repeat is structured, I have over time developed my own way of working with it. So this is just one of the many ways that you can work with beat repeat. But oftentimes, instead of, having something on just a variable knob, I will also have the on button as a specific type of effect. So if I'm like moving a knob, it's turning that device on too as well. So, Andrew, just saw your question. Do you have any fave Max for Live devices that are go-tos for you? Yeah, totally. I would say a lot of the Max for Live devices that I use are more utilitarian than they are for like creative stuff for effects processing necessarily, but I'd be happy to go through a couple of them later if we do have time today. Enigmatic Onion, at some point if you could help point out how to implement effects in just certain points in our projects. Yeah, totally. So let's do master effects first, and then maybe we can look into specific things within each of these parts. So for this stage, I'm going to go ahead and turn off push, and you'll notice that the red bracket is going to disappear in live. And instead, I'm going to go ahead and connect my MPK Mini. So feel free to follow along if you do have a controller next to you. Otherwise, you can always refer back to this video. But one of the really great features about the MPK Mini, if anyone is thinking of a first controller that you'd like to have with Live, this is a really great option because you've got keys, you've got pads, you've got a joystick, which is really cute. You got some knobs here too to do variable stuff. So let's dive right into this. And generally for live performance, a lot of people ask like, do you actually need a controller? And kind of going back to what I mentioned just now about what I think are some of the crucial elements about live performance, I really strongly encourage you to get a controller if you're interested in live performance. Because again, you're trying to make that visual connection between your audience and what you are doing too. And that's really the difference between, say, watching a live performance and just listening to someone play a mix or something. So yeah, strongly encourage getting a controller. If you're looking for something that's, a little bit lower in the budget, this is a really great option. This is the Akai MPK Mini. And yeah, we're going to use a couple of the knobs today. So again, what we're going to do, this is something that I also spoke a little bit about in my previous streams as well, but a really great feature to start to get to know a lot of is the MIDI spec. Not a feature actually, but a type of protocol, because that's what it is. The MIDI spec, if the more you know about MIDI and how it's implemented, the more you're going to be able to harness it and really use it to the best of how you can make use of it in your live sets. So we're going to head over here into MIDI mapping mode. And you can also access this by pressing Command M if you are on a Mac, or Control M if you're on a PC. So once you're in MIDI mapping mode, a couple of these options over here in Live will turn a shade of like bluish purple. And anything that's colored in that shade is going to be accessible as something that you can map. So let's go ahead and map a couple of things. For example, I think I'd like to map the beat repeat on and off button. So all that I did was click on this button and move the knob that I want it to map it to. So again, you got to make sure that your controller is connected. You've got it set up in Live. That's something that I've covered multiple times before in previous streams, so I'm not going to go too much into it. But I've got it connected. It's got its remote function on in the preferences. So now I'm mapping the beat repeat on and off button. I think I would also like to map the delay dry wet. So let's go ahead and open this too. We've got delay dry wet here. We've got reverb here too. Oh, whoops, let's not do the select device. Let's undo that. Let's do dry wet on the reverb as well. And for now, let's just do the on and off buttons for the auto filter stuff too. So let's do on button and off button to get our like telephony kind of effect, right? So once I'm done with that, I'm gonna press Command M and we can exit out of this. And now, even if all my devices are closed up, I'm still able to add a couple of effects to them. So all of these are connected to my controller as well. Let's go ahead and play back maybe like chorus 1 and see if some of these effects are working. So here we go. Delay. Telephone. Telephony voice. Great, so we're doing good. So that's really the first step about live effects processing. I think it may seem very straightforward, but one thing that you might have noticed is that I had a clear idea. Once I had the suggestions from all of y'all, as well as some of my own suggestions too, I had a clear idea of like, okay, I want to use these, so then I'm gonna make sure that I have some way to implement them. So it's really quite like a step-by-step sort of process. And now we can even think a little bit further, like, okay, we've done some creative processing over here. If I wanted to, maybe I could even have one knob control two things. For example, over here I've got the beat repeat, and right now what is happening is that whenever I turn the knob and it goes beyond the halfway point, I'm turning the device on. So now it's on. And if I wanted to turn it off, then I would have to bring it all the way up past the middle mark. So it's almost like a left and right situation. But there's maybe more things that we can control with this. Like what if I wanted to control the interval at which things are being repeated? The interval usually shows you how often the beat repeat device is able to take a snapshot of the new material that's coming in and then repeat it. So right now we've got 1 bar. We can make this like even shorter as well. So let's go ahead and head into MIDI mapping mode again. And in this case, I'm not just going to map that one knob to the on-off button, which I've already done. I'm also going to map it to the interval button. The interval knob, excuse me. And yes, this is something that's really great. So when you have a MIDI controller, you will be able to control multiple parameters with the same knob or with the same control. You could even do it with a note on your keyboard, although you might want to be a bit careful of that in case you accidentally play something and then you trigger it. So you want to be careful of that too. But great, I've got the knob over there. And if you take a look at the MIDI mapping section over here in the top left, you may not have noticed this, or maybe you already did, but any of the things that I mapped, they got consolidated over here, or collected really, in this list of effects and the specific ways that they are mapped. So for example, I can see over here, when I am using the big knob on the first big knob to be able to control the on and off for my beat repeat, what's happening is that anything that is above the value 64, which in the MIDI spec is like the middle number that you have. So anything that's past the midway point is going to be on. Anything that is lower than the midway point is going to be off. But one thing I like to do a lot of is, instead of doing like a halfway sort of situation, I like setting it so that the minimum is 1. So anything that is just slightly above where the default position should be of the knob, that's already going to turn the effect on, because otherwise I have to move the knob all the way past the halfway point. But now if I do this, I can have a little bit of it on, and I can also do a little bit of variation with the specific kinds of divisions that I can have in the beat repeat. So let's go ahead and head out of MIDI mapping mode, and let's see what we get now. So great. So you might be able to see this over here in the lower left with the beat repeat, but I just need to move the knob a tiny bit to, first of all, turn it on. And then I can move this even more to control the intervals at which I'm getting the different beat repeat repetitions. So now I've got one knob controlling two things and to 2 different degrees. So let's go ahead and take a listen and see if we can hear this audibly. Here we go. Yeah. Cool. And then of course, if you have the knob all the way down, it's just going to be off. So you won't need to, think too much about like, how much am I going past? It's all the way down, device is off. Don't need to worry about it. So that's a very cool feature. Oh, hi, Regine. Nice to see you again. Hi, Maya as well. Great to see you too. Yeah, Regine, my name is dolltr. If you're using my artist name, it's dolltr in all lowercase letters with the exclamation point. I've said it a bunch of times, but that's okay. Mick, can beat repeat alter the pitch? For example, create a melody. That's a great question, Mick. So for most part, beat repeat does not alter the pitch, and that's because, as the name implies, it repeats beats. It does not really change the pitch of something, but we could change a little of the timbre. So check this out. Over here in beat repeat, there's a section here that is a filter. So this means that the filtered repetitions, or the repetitions, are going to be filtered. So that's what we're able to do. Let me see if I can illustrate this by perhaps playing a little bit and moving the filter around. You can also see that the filter has its own like X and Y controls too. So it's a bandpass filter. And it might look a little bit similar to the normal delay plugin, actually, the delay device. So check this out. This is the usual delay that we have. It's also got something similar. And maybe we'll play with that a little too. But yeah, so the beat repeat can be filtered a little bit. Let's take a look at that and see what we get. Cool. So it's kind of subtle at the moment, but you might have seen what I just did there in a very maybe ninja-ish sort of way. I switched the beat repeat feature to, instead of being in mix mode, being in insert mode. And what being in insert mode does is that it kind of makes the original sound cut off when you have beat repeat activated, so it doesn't let the original pass through. Mix will let both blend a little bit, but having that insert mode kind of lets us hear a little bit of that effect somewhat easier, so that we can not hear the original too. So yeah, that's a great question, Mick. Maya, can you, I think you might say that might be can you record FX over pre-recorded material? So it kind of depends on exactly what you're talking about, Maya. I'm not super sure if by recording you mean recording the movement of effects, or maybe you're recording the audio of effects. You could do both. And maybe one of the ways that I might illustrate this is through maybe doing a little bit of material stuff in arrangement view. So let's take a look over here. I'm gonna go ahead and select all of my clips in my chorus scene. So just clicking on the first clip that's in the drums track, holding down Shift and clicking on the mallet, and then pressing Command C or Control C to copy. Then I'm gonna head back into arrangement view over here, and maybe let's paste that over here. And now we've got all of these popping up. So now I'm here in arrangement view. If I didn't want to be able to say record in beat repeat, I would be able to if I had, first of all, the automation arm button turned on in arrangement view, and I'm making sure that, again, nothing else is armed over here. So now maybe we'll be able to record some of that movement. Let's see what we get. Let's try this out. And wait, let's also go ahead and maybe drag a couple of these loops up so that they're all the same length as the mallet clip over here. So let's drag them out. I think altogether it might be 16 bars. Yeah, great. So now we got them looping in arrangement. Let's also just go ahead and loop the section itself. So Command L or Control L once you've selected a clip. And let's go for it. Let's see what we get. Record stuff. Cool. So let's take a pause. And maybe the answer to your question has been already answered if you saw what was happening. So usually whenever you're recording something in live, that track or whatever track has info being recorded onto it will usually have it will usually glow in red. That was a really weird way of putting it, but it has some like red hue to it. So in this case, if we open up the master track, we can now see that, yes, some of the devices and truly the parameters that we were adjusting now have little knobs next to them, so their automation has been recorded in, which is great. So yes, in that case, you would be able to record automation in this sense. I hope that kind of answers your question. Maybe. I think so. So that's probably, I think, what you meant. Let's see. Todd, can you print the beat repeat data to a track? So that is, I think I might have just covered what you meant, Todd. I think if I didn't just do that, feel free to let me know, and I'll re-clarify that again. But yeah, you can absolutely kind of record it to a track. So it's pretty much like automation. It is automation. It's not really printing stuff. Although if you wanted to, you could absolutely print the audio from the beat repeat and do some cool mangly things with it. So for example, let's say we've got, let's say we're playing with beat repeat maybe on a specific track. Maybe I want to do it on it could be cool to put it on the drums. So I'm going to go ahead and maybe delete all of these. You can always right click on any parameter that's been automated and say delete automation. You can also use Command Delete or Control Delete if you're on a PC or a Mac. Let's go ahead and delete this as well. Oh, not return default. Delete automation. Yeah. Okay, cool. And close some of these up. Same thing for the on and off here. Delete automation. Great. So let's go ahead and put the beat repeat specifically on the drums. And I've put it at the end over here. So let's see what happens if we try to maybe move a couple of the beat repeat features and put in some automation first, and then maybe we can print it to a track. So let's go ahead and just do some drum beat repeat. So here we go. Yeah, and I think the only reason why I thought of this was because we have to be careful of how we use the word print. Usually when we talk about printing, we mean like print to audio and stuff, but you can absolutely do that. So we've got drums over here. Let's say I really liked that beat repeat performance and I wanted to have it as audio. I can create a new audio track, and there's a couple of ways to go about doing this. I'll just show you one of the ways to do it. And that is, you can do this through like resampling and other stuff, but one really great direct way to do it is to take the audio in from a different track. So for example, audio in from drums, and you can arm the track. And when you play the track back, you'll be able, if you have the track on off for monitoring, and you can also temporarily mute it if you want to be safe. You can record in the data that's coming here. So let's do it. that's enough. And now if we listen back to this track, we can solo it and... So we've got a printed version of the audio over there. So I hope that also answers your question. I feel like there's like a lot of different ways that your question could have been interpreted. So maybe that doesn't answer it, but we'll see. Great questions though, everyone. Thank you so much for keeping all of them in. So I'm going to go ahead and turn automation arm off, and we're going to head back into session view over here so I can show you a couple more things as far as like more utilitarian uses of FX processing goes. But I also know that we're past the halfway mark, so usually at this stage I try to take a quick break and look at the chat, answer a couple of more questions. Yeah, oh, hello to Loom. Hey, would you recommend the Push 2 as a controller if you work mostly in arrangement view when songwriting? That's a really great question, Loom. So, and I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Please forgive me if I'm not. I would recommend the Push to anyone who is a really good live user. I think it can work really great for both linear and non-linear work. I've used Push a lot in arrangement view too, albeit in a different way. Though I will say that for songwriting, at least personally, it's interesting that you mentioned that, but personally when I do songwriting stuff, you might be able to guess that I actually use session view a lot. So kind of depends on the process. I think, but when I do have a linear idea in arrangement view, then of course I use arrangement view. So I think I only ever encourage people to get Push if you are an avid live user. If you're just starting to use live and you are only trying to get a feel of it, I would not recommend getting Push until you are sure that you like the workflow and that it's for you. So I'm not sure if your background at this stage about what you use live for, but if you've been using it for a long time and if you would like to invest in something, then yes, absolutely, Push is a really great option for that. So yeah, cool, great. Thanks, Maya. Wasn't sure if I answered your question. Yeah, cool. Jonathan, does MIDI mapping change if you move the effect to another track? I noticed the MIDI was still mapped for the beat repeat. So I guess you kind of answered your own question. Like, doesn't that kind of answer your own question? But yeah, great job answering your own question. Rio, how if combined Launchpad MIDI controller for live effects processing? Cool. So if you wanted to, you could absolutely assign like a random pad for processing. It works differently depending on the specific kind of controller that you have. But for now, we're using this controller over here, so maybe a couple of your questions will already be answered. We've been using the knobs so far to do this. Something else that it's really good to keep in mind, though, is that if we take a look at our master effects again, such as the auto filter over here, I mapped them to knobs, but what could have been a better use of my controller in this case might have probably been to just map some of the pads, because pads, instead of giving you CCs, usually they give you note values. And whenever you have a note value, it's usually meant to turn something on or off. So because of that, maybe our pads are really better suited to control the on and off buttons for our auto filters, and a couple of the knobs are better suited for more variable things. So I'm going to go ahead and do this. I'm going to delete the original mappings that we had on the auto filters for their on and offs. Instead, what I'm going to do is map the on and offs to two of the pads, and then on each of the filter frequencies on the respective auto filters, that's where we'll do the knob stuff. Great, so knob here, knob here. Now, when I exit MIDI mapping mode, you should be able to see that the... yes, I forgot that something else was happening over here. Cool. So let me go ahead and redo this, but let's actually up, and then we'll turn this one down as well. Great. I forgot because I had a couple of other mappings that were going on. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this one off. Excellent. And let's start from scratch again. So now these two pads are turning the devices on and off. And then these knobs are the ones controlling the filter frequencies. So now this can be kind of cool, right? Because maybe I want to be able to, let's see, what should we do? Yeah, cool. I want to be able to just turn the radio effect on and off, but I can also have independent control over each of the different frequencies too, right? So I can say things like, okay, maybe for this part, I want to have reverb stuff on it too, but then I also want to do a high pass filtery reverb situation. So now the reverb is very wet, but I can also filter. So that's something that you can think about also when you're mapping different kinds of elements to this. But for now, I'm going to turn these off because I want to talk a little bit about the more utility sorts of things that go on. And really, when I speak about utility stuff, I think for most part, I do mean audio. So let's go ahead and create a new audio track over here. That's going to be Command T on a Mac or Control T if you're on a PC. And I'm going to name this Vokes for now. Maybe I'll call it, yeah, let's call it Vokes. And I think, or Vox. I don't know how people pronounce it. Like I usually say Vox because like I think of the word vocals, but it could totally be Vox also, like the media brand. We're not sponsored by them, but I just thought of that. So we have Vox over here. And usually when I think about processing for more utilitarian stuff, I think about the quality of a sound, so timbre stuff, and also the dynamic range of a sound. So maybe that's where Jonathan's suggestion of compression comes in. So let's go ahead and take a look at this. I have usually when I'm dealing with this, I have two main effects that I deal with a lot, and that's EQ and compressor. EQ8 and compressor. So let's head over into the audio effects section in Live, and I'm going to grab EQ8 first and put that before the compressor, and I'll do the compressor right after. So these are the two effects that I tend to have a lot. And what I usually do with the EQ is nothing too aggressive except have some kind of high pass filter that if I were singing with my voice or if I were playing some kind of guitar where I don't necessarily need like the super low end, I would just cut off everything that's low. And that usually prevents a lot of boominess that happens. Just to illustrate what is going on, I'm going to mute myself in my monitoring track, and then I'll use the other vocal track that we pulled up to demonstrate this. Great, so I should be here. And definitely it's going to be quieter because I don't have any compression on this yet, and I haven't implemented any makeup gain. Let me see if I can make it a little louder for everyone. Let's go ahead and, you know what, let's compress this first so you can hear me. So check, that's where I'm coming in. But what I have over here, if I take away that low, the high pass filter, you can see how, it's actually getting kind of rumbly over here in the low end. And my voice itself, you can see that the main frequencies are really coming in around the mid-range over here. So any of these lower ones, I don't really need them. Like you can see how this part, that's where the peaks are happening. The lower stuff here, we don't really need that. So we can go ahead and cut maybe up until there. You do want to use your ears a lot though, and maybe this is really where the listening part comes in. But if you cut too much, you will sound filtered or like very like telephony and high passed. So generally I find a good sweet spot for my own voice has been about 130, 140 around there. And your mileage may vary. If you have a male identifying voice, your voice may not need such a high pass filter. Such a high pass filter. And that's why also for my particular voice, I only know this because I've worked a lot with my voice, but I have a little bit of resonant stuff around 3K, like the 3 kilohertz range. So I'm going to just dip that very slightly too. And again, your mileage may vary. And then after that, I'm compressing it a little bit just so that for some of the softer words that I have, so for example, if I speak like that, it's not getting completely lost. If I turn the compressor off, we're going to hear like a big difference in the dynamic range too. Although you will also have to consider that by using a compressor, you're not just making the softer things louder, but you're also making that noise, which is soft, louder too. So in this case, you can kind of hear actually the fan of my laptop. It's kind of going a little more aggressively than usual just because I'm streaming at the same time. But that's something you want to consider too. And then maybe this also kind of pertains to Enigmatic Onion's question too, but another way that I've found really useful for implementing delays and reverbs is, of course, through sends and returns. So let's open up the sends and returns over here. And usually I keep these hidden when I'm not using them so that I don't have to take up too much real estate inside Live. But now on this vocal track, let's also go ahead and maybe up the ratio slightly so that I get more of that like radio-ish compression. I can use the sends and returns to send a copy of my voice to the return track. So I like to think of return tracks, and this is a term that I'm borrowing from the amazing Abe Decay of give some claps for Abe in the chat. I love Abe so much. So Abe calls these community effects, which I thought was really great. So return tracks are really good for housing any kind of audio effect that you want to be shared between multiple tracks. Let's say I've got the vocals over here. So I can send a little bit of them to a reverb, maybe a little bit of delay too. And I can do the same for my mallet track, for example, if I wanted the melody to also be affected by the same reverb and delay. And now when I play these two back, and I sing as well, or speak, you can hear that they're sharing those effects. And this is really helpful if you are managing, say, a set that might be a little bit more on the CPU heavy side, because when you use return tracks, you don't have to have, for example, the same reverb on every track that you're using. You can just have one reverb in a return track and be able to affect that using the sends and returns. So you don't have to have different copies, and that ends up building up a lot of CPU too, even if it is a native device in Live too. And that maybe goes back to something in general that I did mention at the beginning as well, but I've found from my experience that really performing with live effects is a lot better on your CPU if you are just using effects that come in live. And if you know what effects to use, or if you've explored enough effects, you'll really find that there is quite a big spectrum of sound colors and different kinds of types of effects processing that you can get. So honestly, for most of my live sets, I only ever use native live devices. I think the exceptions would be, I'm trying to think of the exceptions. It's hard to think of the exceptions. Ah, yes. Vocal Synth 2 by Isotope and Stutter Edit 2 also by Isotope. Like, those are the only two things I think that I actively use for live effects processing. Ah, yes, and also Waves Tune whenever I want like some auto-tuney kinds of effects. That's also really cool. So those are, I guess, my top 3 external devices that I sometimes use for live performance. But even those, when you implement them, you can see that they really affect the CPU a lot, even if they're being idle. So usually for any kinds of external effects that I'm using, if I'm not using it, I just turn it off. So I have one of those pads or mappings mapped to something that just makes it turn off when I don't need to use it. And then when I need to use it, I manually turn it on. It's been the best way to manage CPU thus far. So that's a workflow that I've developed. But yeah, so we got the utility kinds of things going on, able to add some reverb and delay too, which can be very nice if you're performing like live vocal stuff. So that's something that I generally encourage quite a lot. And it will take a little experimentation too, like I said, just because everyone's voice is a little different. And you may want different degrees of delay or reverb, things like that. So I'm going to unarm this track and turn on my monitoring again so that you hear me clean without all of the effects and stuff like that. Let's see. Nefertiti, what's the best to get started in live looping? 101 practice basics of some kind? Yeah, absolutely. So if you check out my live looping 101 video, I think you were there last week too, actually. That's a really great way to just get started. I think practicing and getting the timing right, I think, is one of the more difficult aspects. Like, ironically, people think that, oh, it's just like pressing a button and lining up the clips. It's more than that. And I think, I don't know if I can speak for every single live performer or live looper, but even now when I live loop, sometimes I get a lot of anxiety because it's like you have to time it and you really have to make sure that the loops line up. Not just timing the start, but also timing the end, and then making sure that if you are doing any kind of looping with multiple tracks, like the tracks that you have clips in, the clips are multiples of each other. So for example, not having like a 3-bar clip and then having a 5-bar clip in another one, but making sure it's maybe in increments of 2, 4, or 8. That's my general recommendation for that, just because they're multiples of each other. So like if you have a 4-bar loop and a 2-bar loop, it's very easy to line them up. So definitely a lot of the practicing stuff happening. And Jonathan, yeah, you are welcome. Sometimes we answer our own questions, which is awesome. I think that's like, even though I'm not your teacher necessarily, that's my personal goal as an educator and a professor. I tell this to like my college students too, especially when they ask a lot of questions that are great questions, but they already know the answers to them. So it's like when you get to the stage where you're asking questions and you're answering them yourself, I feel like that's like a really good place to be. So you're at a great place. Yeah, so I think, let's see. More questions. What is makeup gain? Yeah, so on a compressor, this happens in a lot of compressors, but usually what it tries to do is that makeup gain will automatically compensate for any of the gain reduction that's happening. So let me demonstrate this with the original track that we had for the vocals with the reverb and delay on it. Great. So by default, let's turn off the delay and reverb or bring down the sends. excuse me. By default, whenever you pull up a compressor, what Live tries to do is turn this thing called makeup gain on. And whenever you compress something, you are actually reducing some of the gain, which is the volume of the signal. And you see that over here in the GR section of the compressor, which stands for gain reduction. So the bigger this, or the larger or longer this orange yellow fader is, the more it's coming down, the more something's getting compressed. And this is the amount of the gain that's being reduced. So if you have makeup gain turned on, that is automatically compensated for. If I turn this off, you'll hear that, yes, my voice is compressed, but I'm not getting any of that makeup gain. So this kind of goes back to an analogy that I have mentioned a couple of times before, but when you're using a compressor, you're not just making things louder. Like a lot of people just, and as a rule of thumb, you are. But what's really happening in a compressor is that you're getting the loudest part of the sound and you're getting the softest part of the sound, and you're decreasing the dynamic range. So you're making louder parts softer, you're making softer parts louder. But then there's still this remaining difference between the loudest point of the original signal and the current point that you're at. And that's where you need makeup gain to bring that up. So again, this is kind of like a visual sort of thing. I usually draw it out if I have the ability to draw things out like on a tablet or something. But loudest point, softest point, compression, and then makeup gain. So that's a lot of what visually I think about. Hopefully that helps. That's what makeup gain is. Maya, can you gate out the fan? Yeah, absolutely. We could totally put a gate on this. So if I wanted to, I could head over here into the audio effects category. Let's put a gate before the EQ. And now, so you have to be careful of this too. I like to think of a gate as being really the opposite of a compressor, although like the opposite of compressor is actually like an expander. It's a little different. But what a gate does, as you might be able to hear, is that if you have the correct settings, which again will take a little bit of experimentation to do, you will be able to prevent certain softer sounds from coming through. So for example, in this case, let's adjust this. I think maybe about 50 something is good. So you can hear that when I'm not talking, you're not hearing any of that background noise. Ha! Yeah, cool. And you can also see visually where things are coming up. And this is through lowering the threshold. So it's kind of like the same thing, not the opposite. Same thing as the compressor. The threshold is lowered to the level of where you want the device to start kicking in. So I'm going to turn off the gate for now. But as far as compressors go, when you lower the threshold to a certain value, that's the value at which the compressor will start kicking in. Same thing for a gate. So if you put a gate to a certain level, that's the value at which things will pass through the gate. So you're going to be able to hear that. Great. So let's close these up right now, and I'll hit back over into the original. Let's put the delay and reverb back on. Woo! Okay, cool. Yeah, awesome. Let's check out if there are more questions as well. Yeah, so can get fan. How about your opinion if we use two laptops when performing live, like Madion or Kygo? Yeah, absolutely. You can totally do that too. I've designed like shows where we've used 4 laptops before, so it's totally up to you. I think it really depends on your specific system that you want to have. I've definitely worked with a lot of people who, because of the nature of their setup as well as the stakes, like if you think about Madion and Kygo, these are really internationally touring DJs, so it might be in their best interest to always have a second laptop, because the stakes are so much higher. It's much higher than like if you're playing in your basement or something like that. So that's something to keep in mind, the stakes, as well as how far you want to take your live performance stuff and how much your computer is doing. Generally, for a lot of dual computer setups, it's usually because some part of visuals are also being controlled too, so they need a second computer to be able to process that. Otherwise, having all of that on one computer might render the CPU like very, very stressed out. So that's why you would have 2 of those. And if you want to discuss further, you can always book a consultation with me. That's what I do as a live experience designer professionally. So great question. And let's see. Yeah, let's just maybe do more questions in the last couple of minutes because we're running out of time. Regine, when you perform live, are you able to hear the effects yourself in real time, or is it a delay of voice? Yeah, usually you can hear it in real time. If I'm just setting things up like I did now, I can hear everything that I've been doing. And most of the delay, if anything, happens to to be related to latency overall in your system. So that's something that you would check in your audio preferences. Great question. Pedro, yeah, no problem. And Pedro, so the gate is like how much signal can go through. So the gate, just to reiterate, is not how much signal, but it gives you control over where signal will, over like what level will let the signal pass through. So for example, let's see what happens if I turn on the gate and if I bring my threshold. Let's also switch to this one. Cool. Let's see what happens if I bring my threshold all the way up and I try speaking. So with the gate up, you can't hear anything that is lower than the gate threshold. I'm like messing around with the knob. You can't hear anything that is lower than the gate threshold, but you will hear anything that is above the gate threshold. Like you hear that part, you heard that part when I was really loud, but you couldn't hear any of the lower parts. So that is what the gate is doing. Yeah. Cool. Let me head back over to the other side. Woo. It's like just bouncing back and forth. Yeah, great. So Rio, how to combine between live effects processing with our MIDI recording. So any kind of audio effect that's like live effects can be applied to MIDI stuff. So Rio, I think you might have also joined us late, but we just applied some beat repeat to drums, which are MIDI. So just to reiterate that one more time, I'm going to go ahead and solo this and play some drums. Yeah, so you can absolutely use any kinds of live effects on MIDI stuff as well. And yeah, so that's what you have to do. Pedro, yeah, no problem. And let's see, Cyberghoul. Oh, thank you so much for the kind words, Cyberghoul. Cyberghoul stumbled upon us a few weeks ago, and thank you so much. Really appreciate that you enjoy the content. I think like it's something I really enjoy too. I love sharing info with people, and that is probably going to be the end of the stream today, everyone. I'm just like trying to be aware of the time, and I want to be respectful of everyone else's time too. But thank you all so much again for tuning in. This was really fun talking about some like 101 stuff with live effects processing. If you enjoyed this, please subscribe to our 343 Labs YouTube channel, and you can also subscribe to my YouTube channel too if you enjoyed what you saw. I have daily videos coming out too about things related to performance and other kinds of things as well. So that's youtube.com/dolltr. And if you're looking for my music on the greater internet and things like that, you can find it in all lowercase letters, DOLLTR!CK. Please don't forget to also enter the giveaway. We want you to win stuff. So please enter the giveaway. It's for the DX7 plugin from Arturia. And yeah, I hope to see all of you again for next week's stream, but also please tune in for tomorrow's stream. We're going to have another guest that TAETRO is going to feature on TAETRO Talks. So again, 1 p.m. over here, I believe, or we'll send an updated time if there is a change. But otherwise, daily throughout the rest of the week, we've got streams at 1 p.m. over here on this channel, and more content from me too on mine. Usually mine are everyday releases. Usually I try to do it around like the afternoon as well, around noontime or maybe earlier than that. But thank you so much again, everyone. Hope to see you all soon, and have a great day. Bye.
Morning light, break me through the dark. Once so bright, show your dying star. Cold as ice, piercing through the heart. Warm as skies, melt the days apart. Wanna hide away, try to run away, tell me if you could save me. Got me falling through ashes in the dust of the winter blue. Crying no, take me back home, don't leave me alone. Keep me from running to you, still lost in the ashes in the wake of the burning truth. Rising no, up in the night, don't put out your firewall. Keep me from longing for you. Oh, what you gave. No, can't let this go. Wanna hide away, try to run away. Tell me if you could save me. Got me falling through ashes in the dust of the winter blue. Crying, no, take me back home. Don't leave me alone. Keep me from running to you. Still lost in the ashes in the wake of your love. Trying to know up in the night. Don't put out your fire. Keep me from running for you. Hold me through the violence. Slowly with your silent prayer. Take me back home now. Cover me, hold me round. Down in the ocean of you. Got me falling through ashes in the dust of the winter blue. Crying, no, take me back home. Don't leave me alone. Keep me from running to you. Lost in the ashes in the wake of your burning truth. Rising up in the night. Don't put out your fire. Keep me from running for you. Running after you. Running after you. Running after you. Morning